it's very funny if we sort of like look at this echo of like, AI and fruit have always sort of had a weird relationship. Like, I'm sure it goes back further, but like last summer there was the like fruit. There we go. That's the origin. But like that actually, like, it's not far off, because like there was the whole like fruit cutting videos from last summer where it was like these sort of like they cut into it. And it's like glass fruit and all these things that sort of represent whatever the impossible as represented through fruit. And now like cut to now like these sort of videos at the beginning of the month were sort of sexualized fruit. These fruit that are having extramarital affairs and who are like having extreme sort of like body issues or representing sort of like, stereotypes and foibles in the dating world through just fruit being fruit. And now the fruit has been sort of cast into characters on TV show. And so like that.
Hip Replacement episode 50. Kyle, it's my golden episode.
It is. It's your golden episode.
See?
Because you're 50.
I'm 50. Here we go.
You're 50. Guys. The podcast is 50.
I mean, everybody's 50, including our guest today, Chris Beer. Chris, you're not actually 50, are you?
Spiritually 50. All of us.
Yeah, spiritually 50.
It's after the last couple of weeks, it's hard not to be spiritually aged. At the very least. Although we're still discovering things, right, Kyle? Like sexy fruit, for instance. What was this we were talking about?
So really quick, let me give a quick intro on Chris. Chris, welcome. We have Chris Beer, who is because
I
Chris
is fruit thing.
Okay, fine.
Right. They're separate.
Thank you for clarifying.
So we're joined by Chris Beer, who is a senior data journalist at GWI. Chris and I met in London. He came to one of the Trend Report happy hours. And we got to talking, and he does a lot of work in similar spaces with actual data, which I'm very qualitative, and Chris, you're very quantitative. So I think like we thought it'd be a fun joint sleigh. To that point, we were talking earlier before you got on, Ben, that I asked Chris if he's been getting the AI Love Island stuff. So do you know about this, Ben?
No. AI Love Island is not part of my vocabulary. I know what AI is, and I know what Love Island is, but not AI.
I left out a key adjective. AI Fruit Love Island. Excuse me.
Wow. Okay.
So really there is this trend now. There are a few very viral quote unquote videos and pages that have like hundreds of thousands of followers that are making these videos based off, basically they're recreating Love Island using AI fruit. And that is a trend upon a trend, because 3 or 4 weeks ago, I think 3 weeks ago, this trend of like AI fruit adultery videos started popping up. Basically like Italian brain rot, but like soap opera drama between like sexy fruit, like having various infidelities. It's crazy. It's also hilarious, but it's like a Trojan horse for like the apocalypse for entertainment. Like it is, people are actually watching the AI Fruit Love Island, which is distressing. I don't know who they are. They all seem like young people.
Say who makes it. I mean, this was, this is the second time that brain rot has come, Italian brain rot in particular, has come into the conversation, because we were talking about the Easter egg like inclusion of Ballerina Cappuccina and Tung 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 Sahur in the latest Fortnite trailer. The thing that I thought was interesting about that story, right, is that Fortnite, on the one hand, pop culture sensation, but on the other hand, like a piece of major IP, so much so that there was this whole lawsuit between Apple and Epic last year about it. Those Italian brain rot characters sort of came out of nowhere, and I don't assign ownership of them to anybody. I guess somebody probably does own them, but I don't assign ownership. And so seeing them in Fortnite was interesting, right? Because somebody clearly had to do a licensing deal in order to do that.
Did they?
Well, yes.
I want to hear a lawyer talk about this.
I've been really business affairs. Like, I can tell you that somebody had to approve that.
Anyway.
Somebody's signature is on paper somewhere. But what it made me wonder was, in this sexy fruit adultery Love Island situation, like, is the person making sexy adult fruit Love Island benefiting in some way from the IP?
I think it's exactly the same thing as Italian Brain Rot, but instead of like Gen Alpha, young Gen Z watching it, I think it hit like mid to older Gen Z and millennials. Like, it's hitting like a nuclear bomb. And it's like, it doesn't matter who's making it. Like, there are a few accounts that are claiming to make it. One has a lot of followers. There are so many AI fruit infidelity videos going around. Like, it is hilarious and wild. Like, and it's not even, and it doesn't end at AI fruit. There's one I saw about like two cigarettes who are like destitute and poor and trying to figure out their life. There's one about TikTok Anita and Instagram Anita and Facebook Ito having a love affair. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, okay. So, Chris, question for you then. So there was a story in the Guardian last week as well about why everything has arms and legs now. Like, essentially the mascotification or the cartoonification of brand expressions, presumably to tap into just the affinities of young people, right? Like, what does your world say about all of this?
I guess, I mean, my instinct is it's sort of batting the question back to you, but do you think this is downstream of the, what would you call it? I mean, like, the tone of voice that fast food brands pioneered, right? That sort of brand social space. Like, do you think it's a visual manifestation of that? Do you think it's of that category? It's a different type of thing altogether.
So you're saying that or you're asking if it's a visual representation of the relatable brand?
Yeah.
Or the unhinged brand.
Unhinged, that's the word I'm thinking of, yeah. Or are these mascots more straight-laced? I'm just trying to, figure out where to land on this.
I don't think they are. What? Well, I guess...
Well, not in the sexy fruit videos, anyway.
No, but I guess if we're also rewinding it backwards, like, yes, the mascotification, sure, which is same and different, but like, we're winding it back like Italian Brain Rot. That in and of itself was not pure of heart in a lot of ways. And I think a lot of these things that are sort of emerging and becoming mascots to this story, which I'm not familiar with, but that sounds really great. A lot of these things, or most of these things, aren't pure of heart in that way. And I think in a lot of ways that's why, well, actually, we'll see. It's to be seen. I think why a lot of the mascots for brands a la Duolingo are also not pure of heart anymore. But I wouldn't be surprised if now they become like goody goodies. But that's a different thing.
It is interesting, right? Like, the idea that any sort of brand expression is pure of heart is
this economy
potentially, contradictory. As much as I believe in the positive motives of brands, truly, sincerely, I do. Like, there's always an incentive there that has to be taken into account. Yeah, I guess, Chris, what I'm wondering is just like, as you look at Gen Z behaviors or whatever, does it feel like they are more, because of the proliferation of anime, because of the proliferation of the endless extension of adolescence into now our 40s at the very minimum? Does it feel like this is being done because the kids are kids even longer, I guess is one way to put it?
I mean, yeah, I think I hadn't really considered the animation angle, although I'm sympathetic to that. The idea that, okay, maybe some sort of animated media is just a higher share of their media diet overall. And the extended adolescence thing, I think possibly. I suppose what I was wondering is, how much is a trend that's communicating to the audience rather than the brands communicating to each other, right? Because that's often the trick with identifying what's really going on here. And I think with the mascotification, I was just thinking of various talks and conferences I've been to, in the market research space, where you're sort of wondering, okay, where's the data behind this? And it's just this thing that snowballs and gains momentum. I suppose I can speak to one part of that. the trouble with working with data is like you're often the boring person who's saying, well, like, actually this thing will always be a thing. It's always relevant, right? It's just always there in the background. But I think in a cultural context, I find so interesting is how you deal with this as a brand. And I've seen it with different examples. You could apply it by sector, but they're wanting to do, let's say, the Duolingo, being out there, being unhinged voice. But then people in the comments are like, "Where's my product? I ordered it 2 weeks ago." And how you balance those two interactions, I find fascinating because
yes.
How is it the case that you have to build a platform that you can be unhinged on? Like you have to assume that there's a solid center that you can actually deliver the basics of what you're doing. Is it the case that maybe it's not relevant? You've just got to be careful about where you allow that voice to be. But then with now that, comment section so ubiquitous, is it even possible to do that?
Well, I mean, it is an interesting thing that, if you use Duolingo as a meter or a yardstick to measure against, like, if you're making a consumer product that is not deliverable virtually 24 hours a day, then you shouldn't behave like a service that is deliverable 24 hours a day and constantly on, right? Like it just, it's like, well, whatever. It's like going to a country that you don't speak the native language in and insisting that people speak English with you. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. Well, so it is, speaking of those things, Chris, and just kind of getting a little further into your work, like, the data signals that do point to phenomena that are always going to be around, I'm sure we're probably telling you until just recently that the Facebook metaverse was going to be around forever, right?
What was the data even saying at all, right?
Yeah.
I'm joking, of course.
Yeah. The metaverse thing is so funny because I think this is something that, I find it funny in many different ways, partly because, the work I do, I was so immersed in it for so long. And I think that it was just a phrase that meant so many different things, so many different people. Think for some it meant a specific platform, right? And with Facebook, I always felt like Meta, they were doing it a little bit both. When they talk about it, they talk about the platform they were developing, i.e. Horizon Worlds, but also pointing to the bigger computing future where that would be, somehow linked with other worlds. Is this the metaverse, right? You're connecting with other metaverses. And I guess I always lean to viewing it the platforms individually, just because I think, if you're a media planner, buyer, that's how you'd interact with it, right? You'd think, even if you're going in the sandbox, you think, well, I have to buy real estate in this virtual space. Whether it's a good idea or not is another matter. And to that end, you mentioned Fortnite earlier, and I think for me, that's always been the most solid bit of it, is that these gaming worlds, they're now much more persistent. GTA Online has been Roblox is older than Facebook, I think, isn't it? Roblox is really quite old. I think so. Yeah, please, someone might need to fact check me on that. I'm pretty sure it is. It's really quite older than you think.
I have no idea. Either way, it doesn't matter because, like, you're right. Like the Roblox and Fortnite, Minecraft, like all of those things have eaten the lunch of the idea of the metaverse. It's just come up again and again. But it's fascinating because you have a brand like Meta that couched their whole identity on that, and it didn't work.
Well, isn't it all? I sort of argue that those things have eaten the lunch of the metaverse, because I think the fundamental metaversal argument was always just that essentially these worlds will manifest a kind of perception universe, world within world, whatever, and they will become interoperable, and then you'll just have this layer of digital goods, digital interaction, digital worlds. And it was the interoperability that doomed it to, or the lack of interoperability that doomed it to fail, I think.
Well, the thing is,
incarnation.
That is absolutely right. But like, I think the thing that, like, if there were, I feel like, so many missed opportunities and so many overcomplications, at least on the part of Meta, in the sense of that, I think about this a lot. I think about this more often than I could even tell you. Is like during, and we talked about your
Roman
before.
Empire, Kyle. Is this?
I guess you could say this at this point.
Your Roman Empire.
Sure. It's not the metaverse. It's just that, like, during COVID, like during lockdown times, there was such an opportunity to like rethink critically about how certain things in society work. And that's a big part of it too, is that like, having sort of hybridification of online and offline, like really figuring that out. We had that opportunity, and like nobody really did it. Nobody really did the leadership on that. It was all or nothing. And that sort of like failed. Like in the meantime of that sort of like, well, you're going to have your meetings in the metaverse, which never is going to happen. That was when, say, the Fortnite and the Roblox and the whatever took off, because it was too busy being like, you could only be here. That sort of binary dynamic made that sort of hybridity, which is what reality is, to the point of what we talk about every so often of like, your daughter Harper, being on Roblox, watching a TV, like doing these things at the same time, like that is it. But like, I don't think people, that's the Roman Empire, is that like we missed an opportunity to really rethink parts of society and culture and communication and living for the better, instead of like, well, it's over, back to normal. And like, that's, what did we learn? Apparently nothing.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, does the data tell us anything interesting or noteworthy about this?
It does. I mean, I said the thing about semantics, I think partly just to give an indication of, I'm dealing with survey data, and there are certain terms you ask them to respond, and so you've got to be aware there's not going to be 100% agreement or even, recognition of the phrase. The classic, even up till 5-6 years ago, that was often the case with influencers. We found it quite hard to do surveys about that because it wasn't really a household phrase at that point, and you sometimes have to engineer it of like, do you follow experts on social media in these categories? And then when you're presenting the material, you'd say, well, here we're talking about influencers, but we sort of have to talk about a different way to respondents. But yeah, the data is interesting. So we started researching it in 2022. And I think at that point, there was, let's say, 13-15% who had, said, yes, I will happily participate in a metaverse, using that phrase. So here we're parking Roblox, Fortnite, all the rest of it. Yeah, maybe there was some, but it just dropped off every year since then. And it's not really been part of the picture. And to be honest, we've retired some metaverse related questions from our surveys because the responses weren't just coming in. So it's a weird meta thing with research sometimes, is you often get a leading signal from the lack of responses that you get as whether something's asking about. And then of course it's now, I guess we're in the funding situation where, talk about eating lunches. AI has just come along and is just the next tech thing. And that's the other thing I find quite interesting about it, is because I think it can be a hiding to nothing to compare the two, but the nature of one is we're talking with a future focus of like, well, this will be the future 8 to 10 years. You've got to think that far ahead about what we're building. Of course, AI comes along and is immediately very useful to lots and lots of people, is adopted very, very quickly. And you're like, oh, it could have been that simple all along, right? The next thing.
Right.
It's this is a website that people are like, oh my God, this is really helping me with my work. The other thing that I thought was worth mentioning, I know we touched on Roblox already, but I'm pretty sure in the US, it's been the fastest growing game franchise since 2020, in our research at least. And I think that's quite amazing because
that Roblox has, or that
Roblox has.
Roblox has,
yeah, and you'd think that's pretty amazing. So this is going back to 2020, so this is going through the pandemic and out of it. So even as people have gone back to normal, other sources of amusement have come along. Like Roblox has just kept ticking on every year.
It's fun. I should spend a little time talking to Harper, my 16-year-old, about what it is that makes that platform sticky. Because if you think about the change in her life since the beginning of the pandemic, like 6 years ago, she was 10 years old. And so like she's been through multiple life stage changes just through the simple process of adolescence, right? And she has a very serious boyfriend. She participates in sports. She does really well in school. She's got all of this stuff going on, but Roblox is still a thing that she does as a means to socialize with her friends and to blow off steam and whatever the case is. And I think in part it's because the platform doesn't ground itself so much in a particular kind of experience. It's a sandbox, right? So it's like you can go in and you can find whatever you feel like doing. And what is at the ultimate, like, foundational level of it is that it's her talking to her friends.
Right. I was saying, is that not truly what social media says it is, but it's not.
That's
in a
yeah,
lot of
yeah, yeah,
ways.
fully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's, I mean, if I may remove myself from the pillar of data and you go into anecdote for a moment, it was quite funny reflecting on this, because I remember when I was a teenager, I guess within close to Harper's age, you know, I sort of grew up in quite a rural part of England. So myself and a lot of friends, you know, after school, we're all sort of going to different villages. We're quite nucleated. Like, we're not meeting up at one common place. And that was the time, you know, because it's quite rural England, like relatively high speed broadbands came quite late. So in the evening, we would usually log on to, got to be Grand Theft Auto 4 at the time. So this is before GTA Online is even a thing. So we didn't really think of it in those terms, but now you would view that as a kind of social media.
Right.
But the funny thing
For
was, at the same time we were doing it, Sony was building out PlayStation Home, I think it was, which is like Second Life. It was a kind of proto-metaverse.
Huh.
And like we were just couldn't wait for this, because it had been development for years and years delayed, and we thought, oh, this simulacrum of the real world, we can go out and do things, it'll be amazing, we'll go on that. So years and years and years, it got delayed, and we went in it and sort of walked around, and of course, it's just not that fun compared to just going around Liberty City and GTA and just running each other over, which when you're like 15-year-old boy is like all you want to do. And I guess it was one of those things that made me think, you know, as the metaverse came around again, or in the early 2020s, is that fun element. I wouldn't say it was forgotten, but it just didn't seem to come through. And in fact, you made me remember, Ben, when we did another survey on it in, it's been March 2022. We asked people who weren't interested in it, well, like, who weren't going to do it, why they weren't, and the top reason was just lack of interest. It was that simple. It wasn't really a compelling offer to them, you know. Whereas something like AI, there might be other factors that are limiting it from, but people can see why it might be sort of useful to them. But there's other things that might get in the way. Whereas the metaverse is like, well, I just don't get into this as a concept.
Yeah, for sure. It's the easy button style applicability of it is harder to grasp.
This is all so interesting, because like, you're right, like there have been so many iterations of what technically the quote unquote metaverse was and is. Like, even thinking about like Second Life and like things like that, which was like totally maybe the first iteration of that, which is probably mostly a Gen X and or older millennial thing, which was based in sort of like, again, like the Second Life aspect. Like, that wasn't for kids, that was for adults.
There was speaking of which, there was an MTV backed virtual world for a while that was based on the Laguna Beach show on the site, and that did significant enough numbers that MTV then said, we're going to fund a bunch of these things, and the next one we want to do is a virtual Lower East Side of New York, where people can just walk around the virtual Lower East Side and go into the Mercury Lounge and go into Pianos and go into Max Fish, and you can see all of the cool people, and you can watch, you know, the Strokes play an exclusive show. And, you know, Kyle, Chris, you may not know me well enough to know this, but I am very glass half full. And so when they came to us at Vice at the time to talk about it, it was like, yeah, this is cool. This is like you're a kid in, you know, the middle of nowhere, Iowa, and you can be in the room with the Strokes at the Mercury Lounge. Like, that would be so exciting. Like, wouldn't you want to do that? Well, actually, no, because you can't cross that uncanny valley. Or at least at the time you couldn't. So it's sort of interesting to think, like, have we gotten to a place where we can do it, or alternately, do we just never want to, and instead we just want to have our little, you know, like car chase games and let the virtual world be that?
I mean, I do think there are certain sort of like use cases and environments where, like, yes, during COVID we got a lot of that. Like, let me tell you, I did go to a sort of like Zoom rave, and it was a lot of fun. If someone sort of pitched that to anybody now, they'd be like, you're crazy, I'm not doing that, I'm going to a real rave, which I get it. But I also do know that, like, there are still, I did this for a little bit during COVID, but I know it still goes on, is like, you know, there was a moment in that time where I was like, my like Buddhism curiosity like really came central, and I was like, I'm going to do it because I have a friend who's Buddhist, and she invited me to a few sort of like Zoom sessions, which they do every week, this community in LA. And people would be like literally at work, at their job, driving their kids or wherever they were and join a sort of like Buddhism prayer chanting thing for like an hour. And like, is that not that idea? And like, granted, like these are all adults. I'm sure kids do similar things, like a sort of study group. I've done it with writers as well. Like, I think those things exist, but I think it has to have a clear sort of like mission. And I think Zoom and Google now really do a good job of that. Like, I don't think you needed to build a world where I have an avatar walking around when I could just show up and look at a sort of like slide presentation and get the same idea. But that's also like, I don't want to watch a show. I would connect, but don't want to do a show. Sorry, you were saying something, Chris.
So Buddhism as the original metaverse then.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
I think the other part of it shouldn't lose sight of is the grounding it in VR was obviously going to make it tricky to adopt because there's that barrier to entry. So you've got to scale up the hardware as much as the software. And we did some research into this it was for a different purpose last year. It was going through a whole load of research we'd done on what makes people likely to adopt different devices or not. And when you see the factors that come up, it shows you how tricky, if we abstract virtual reality from the metaverse here, like how hard that is to work because cost, like the devices are just expensive. Battery life, which I think is often forgotten. So, even if you could go to the best more immersive multimedia experience of virtual reality, would the battery hold up for 2 hours if you hadn't charged it and you can have it wirelessly? Like, I'm not au fait with battery technology, but it still seems like a bit of a challenge. And also, speed and comfort of the devices, those are the other factors that come out. And again, where I think people want to process fluent things, right? So they're going to gravitate to things they already know, which will be, the software, the Google Meet, the Zooms that we're already using. So, because I think that they've acknowledged that, right? It's the VR kind of thing they're not supporting, but the mobile version, they will, I think, do a bit more with.
To that.
Yes, and the Ray-Bans as well, yeah.
Like, going all in the glasses because, like, again, I mean, they're just recreating fucking, like, what, Star Trek. But, like, I do think that makes sense where it's like, yeah, glasses, yeah, I can wear that. That's not a burden. I don't know anything about the charging on that, which is a very good point. But, like, that over, like, some fucking helmet, yeah, no contest.
Well, I mean, simply from a pure survival, self-preservation.
Well,
lens.
true.
Like
true.
To be able to actually see versus to be able to only virtually see is seems like a deal breaker. Well, so I was curious, did either of you catch the story about the rise of the meta glasses creep?
Oh yeah, I've seen so many of them.
It was like candid recording type thing.
Yeah, essentially. So Kyle, okay, you've seen so many of them. So why don't you give us your?
I mean, it's
a little background
exactly what
on
it
this.
is. So for the people who are unfamiliar, the meta glasses, they're made by Ray-Ban with Meta, and they basically are these glasses, reading glasses. I think they can be sunglasses too, or they're both.
Yeah, they're based off the Wayfarer, which is their
it's basically
most classic silhouette.
Frames that have a camera in the hinge. And there are a lot of people, a lot of women, rightfully so, raising concerns about these glasses being used in, like a massage room, for example, or a locker room, for example, or in very sort of like intimate spaces and recording when they shouldn't be, and or taking photos or doing whatever, so that like you might not tell because someone's just wearing glasses, but they are sort of doing really pervy, creepy things with these glasses. As a result, and like it's go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask. I mean, I'm a little surprised to hear it couched exactly that way, because while I understand,
there's a lot to it, sure.
Well, right. I understand the concern about being recorded in a private space, but the meta glasses creep isn't like in a locker room, is he? Because the creeps are all dudes.
You've not met a gay creep, have you?
Okay, fair enough. No, I'm sure I have, but no, you're right. That my experience does not lead me down that road immediately. So yes, you're right.
I am sure there are that's the whole other thing.
It's so interesting. Is this why? And Chris, I don't know if you have any data to back this up, but is this why wireframe glasses are like minimally framed wire glasses are coming back? Because they're obviously not recording devices.
Mm. I think, yeah, I suppose this just makes me think of a general principle because what we were saying earlier about technology and its adoption. It's like spend a lot of time looking at older predictions of this stuff, and it's the contact with reality we tend to underestimate about how technology is adopted,
Right.
right? And privacy concerns are usually a big part of that. I mean, we're in very different social contexts, right? I guess in the States, just because of the culture and the law behind it, it feels like that type of legislation would be hard to pass. I honestly don't know what GDPR would say about it, for example, but I imagine the EU would clamp down that kind of thing quite hard. I know in Japan, like it's already law with phone recording, isn't it? I think that they have to, if you're recording on a phone, doesn't it have to be the red light is showing so that you can't really do that discrete recording with phones.
Interesting. I don't know.
Same with photo. I don't think you can do it silently. I might be wrong. That might be something I've misheard, but
I would
I
shows.
think the glasses are supposed to indicate some sort of recording state, but
okay,
it's you can. I mean, I don't know. I don't have a pair of these glasses for many different reasons, but I would imagine it's probably not all that hard to circumvent that.
That's the thing. Like to what you're saying, Ben, and like to the point of the creepy thing to also bring it around too is like the creeps are like watching people on the train, and they're in these sort of like spaces where I might be like standing on a train, and there's a person sitting down, and they might have a revealing top on, and I'm just recording down their shirt. That's a very common example of it, but like that has there are some things I don't think it's as obvious to see if it's recording or not, but there are some like apps and technologies coming out that can sort of alert you if you are in the presence of one of these glasses, because it does give off a signal. It does, like I'm forgetting. There's another thing that has a similar
particular
signal.
Bluetooth signature or something like that. I think.
Yeah, and so like you can get a notice, and you might not know who. You might not know. Like there's also another similar. I'm forgetting the other tech that has a similar signal, but it alerts you, and like that at least is like that is great. Like that is. You shouldn't have to even be alerted in the first place. It shouldn't be a thing that you have to worry about. But that is great that is available. I will be intrigued to see if there's sort of wider adoption, like less of just like, oh yeah, we're using it, more of like Apple or whoever being like, we are putting this in our phone as like something just you will always know. You will always have that security of knowing this ping is happening around you.
I can share something that shows the limitations of data as well, because I just remembered that, I mean, this is before my time. This is something I've found in the archive when the Vision Pro came out, actually, because we did research back in 2015 when both the Apple Watch and Google Glass, they'd either just been released or the Apple Watch was just about to. I think Google Glass was in the world, Apple Watch was just about to. And I think obviously that's partly the fact that the product didn't exist yet, but at that point there were more people excited by Google Glass than Apple Watch. And it shows how hard it is with emerging technologies to tell where it's going to go. And in fact, when the Vision Pro came out, we essentially did a version of that survey again. We brought it back, kept the wording the same, but just changed the options. Again, the excitement for the Vision Pro was higher than the Apple Watch at the time. And I don't really know what to make of that. I sort of think, well, maybe the Vision Pro, it's Apple. They're in it for the long term. Give it a few years, and this will be more popular than we give it credit for. Or maybe it's just that the smartwatch is just the ultimate sleeper hit, and it's only when you're wearing it, you're going about your day-to-day life, you see it on others that you can really understand it. And asking people as it's released can only really tell you so much.
Well, it was also a period of time too. I think the watch usage because of cell phones had dropped off such a precipitous clip that everybody was just like, well, why do I need something on my wrist at all? Right.
But
I can't say that for sure, but it strikes me that it was a historical curiosity, function of time too.
Well, it was that, but it was like, I think it was less of the like, oh, watch, cool. It was more because I remember this and being like, I don't fucking need this because I have like a Fitbit. And like that was the whole thing. Like at the time, it was like I didn't have a Fitbit. I had something like it.
But there was things that I haven't bought because I had a Fitbit. I'm telling you.
Yeah. So but there was a whole like genre of like whatever not calorie, but like activity tracker type thing that sort of was in the water before the Apple Watch. When the Apple Watch came, it was like, I don't fucking care about this. I barely care about this thing I got for free from whoever. And then eventually, I forgot why I got it. I think, oh, that's right. I got it during the pandemic. Again, going back to that. I got an Apple Watch during the pandemic because I always thought it was fucking stupid, because it was like, well, I can't go to the gym. I need some sort of help understanding what my physical activity is. And it's now, I'm like, I could not imagine not having one, because I do think it is so useful in that regard. But like, it ate the lunch of like the Fitbit and all those other things, because like they were designed in the opposite direction, to be sleek, to not have any big numbers or anything. And now it's like, well, actually that data is sort of compelling. And like, I'm not watching TV on my watch, duh. But like, I think that's why people were initially like, that's dumb. I don't want to watch a movie on my watch, which, yeah, that sounds dumb.
Fair enough. Fair enough. What speaking of eating the lunch of somebody else in a category, Chris, another thing that you've done some work on recently that we wanted to hear about was exemplified by Hachette Filipacci pulling the book Shy Girl by Alexandra Alter, I think is the author, well, the alleged author's name, or the alleged AI user's name, because it's been pulled because of the potential use of AI in this, what was a very fizzy horror novel. What do we think? Are the AIs going to eat the author's lunch? I have a strong feeling on this, but I'm interested to know what the numbers say.
Well, I mean, yeah. So I was looking at data because we tried to really get ahead of the AI curve with some of the research we've done. It's paying off dividends with stories like this, because we've got stuff in the archive. I mean, I'll let you guys guess, and this will give an indication of how surprising the figure is. But what percentage of people in the UK is the country I happen to look at because this is where the book's been pulled, are somewhat very interested in AI-generated books?
Are interested?
Somewhat.
Oh. Yeah.
I'm stressed either way. Damn.
I mean, I'm going with my emotional gut, which is like 5%. I would say it's very
5%.
low.
I'm gonna say 30%. That's my gut instinct. I feel like it's gonna be uncomfortably high.
I mean, Carl, you're very close to 25.
Okay.
Yeah.
Although, hold on. Price is Right rules. The closest without going over wins. Right. So
fair.
Yeah.
Fine.
But yeah, it's we've repeated this research quite a number of times, and yeah, this is a very, very crude metric, because I've already alluded to, like, interest, excitement, those kind of hype questions, they can only take you so far. But I'm sure the respondent we're doing this survey, they're thinking, yeah, how much AI is going to be in this book?
Yeah.
Like, do you mean the whole thing? But it's surprising how high the demand for that is. And again, I haven't gone and see how much that overlap with the actual audience of readers.
Right, because there's a lot of really juicy questions in there.
And I also thought, Chris, and correct me if I'm wrong, I thought you said what the level of people that are interested, not who are demanding or seeking out, or you know what I mean? So it's like I'm interested in a lot of things, as Kyle knows, that I will never actually involve myself with to any great degree. But I do find that their simple existence I find interesting. So it's like, does that qualify me as being interested in this case? I don't know.
Yeah, I'd need to check the exact wording of the question, actually, because it was probably a bit more practical than that. It wasn't in the sense of like, would you buy it, right? It probably wasn't that direct, but it would have been
just general interest. That's fascinating.
Let me see. Go, Guy, you go for it. I'll look up the exact wording.
Well, I was like, it's still interesting to me because like it registering interest, whether or not you buy, like that is still something, because like we all do our own polling of our audiences and whatever. So like you do get a bit of that too. But like, are these people like actually readers? I'm curious about that, because I feel like a lot of true readers, true book people would be like, fuck no, fuck that. Number one. Number two, what type of things are they reading? Which is like, that's a less of a sort of like rom-com versus horror. It's not that. I mean like fiction versus nonfiction, because I feel like even the quote unquote nonfiction people, I feel like they'd be more likely to be like, yes, because they're going to want like a how-to shit. And like that, I feel like that whole category is probably right now off the charts with AI, because no one's even looking at that to sort of like question it. They're looking at fiction and maybe even sort of literary nonfiction. So like, I do think I would be curious, like if and when you guys dig deeper into this, because like there's such nuance in that conversation, because like book people, to the point of Hachette being like, no, we're not doing this. book people in the literary world is so rightfully so anti-AI. And like I don't think they're going to break probably for a while, unlike say TikTok, which AI fruit Love Island proves.
It is interesting to see also the level. I mean, look, I am on record and have been for a long time as being an AI bear. And what I mean by that when I say it is that I believe that AI gets incorporated into everything, but much more at a level of utility. Like it's like electricity. And it's interesting to think like to what extent any of these hard lines being drawn around inclusion of AI or disclusion of AI, exclusion of AI, start to manifest through proof points around the creative work itself, right? Like Kate Lindsay this morning in Embedded wrote about people declaring all human work in social posts and animations and that sort of stuff as a proof point and as a reason to believe or a reason to interact. On the other hand, the comedian Connor O'Malley published something last week about which was called Irish Zionism,
hilarious,
which was about
incredible.
how for St. Patrick's Day how we have to go back to Ireland, but turned into this bizarre, as Connor O'Malley turns into this bizarre examination of the nature of fame and privacy and persecution and so on and so forth. And a lot of it, the whole back half of the thing, is all created by AI, like very obviously created by AI. I don't think anybody faults Connor O'Malley for making this hilarious and active social critique using AI, but by the same token, like, if he were an author and he had used any of that,
totally,
the book would have been turned away.
It's that conversation is happening. Obviously, I mean, look, that Connor O'Malley video is hilarious, but like I don't think it would have been as sensitive as a subject if it didn't hit at the same time as the AI fruit Love Island shit, because people are like, they go hand in hand. It's sort of like, this is the sugar on top of something that is otherwise a knife being handed to an industry in a way, like talking about film, talking about like books or whatever. And like, when I was watching that, I was like, it definitely thought that came to mind. It's like, I think this is hilarious. I love Connor. I think he's incredible. I don't think he could have made it without AI because it's sort of commenting on that. However, there are moments where it's like, look, I know what you're doing. Like, you use that because you didn't want to shoot a scene with you giving away the dog because you spent too much money in the scene in the airport. I get it. But like, it sort of revealed.
That was the producer's view.
Hey, having been there, I was like, look, I know
inside the producers.
It costs a lot of money to work with animals because you have to hire a handler, and like the dog or the animal can only be on set for so long. It's like a child. Like you're having a child actor. So like I get it. It's a lot of anyway.
We got to talk about animals. Sorry, Chris. We'll talk about animals in a minute. You go ahead. Go ahead. I got a good animal one.
This is something I was really curious to ask you guys, because it's something I've been thinking over, and it's not really something you can really get through data. So obviously I'm stuck, but it's in the sense of like, if we assume that, and I think it's a reasonable case, that AI is going to be used to produce content, and there will be some, as I think you were describing, Ben, some more artistic or artistically accepted versions of it. Is what that will look like, or what about the technology means certain versions of it will come out. So for example, I think AI is very good for parody because you can, thinking in terms of music, like you can write something orchestral without needing an orchestra, right? So you can make things sound grander. I'm sure people have done it for, family events. Like you write a meme song, it's become the equivalent of bringing like the card or something. And there is something about, because with comedy it can kind of slip in, right? Because it's not making any aspirations to making any artistic statement, but it's showing the art of the possible. And I think the other thing I'm curious about, I would say this is a sort of soft trend prediction of mine, is whether even as AI generated imagery gets better and we assume it gets more and more realistic, creators will go to the older, more primitive versions of it when it couldn't do the faces right, it couldn't do the hands, because the brokenness is inherently more appealing. Like I think it was the Lil Yachty album for a few years ago where the cover was AI generated, but it was done to show, I think, a room full of music industry execs. The whole point being, look at these people, they're grotesque, right? So that was where the brokenness of it helped the statement. But it's because I think of think like music. The most interesting applications of technology, things like acid house have come when the technology's been broken and some use case have been unlocked that the makers never foresaw. So that's something in mind. But I'm very curious of you guys who are on the front lines of this stuff, what you make of that.
I think that's exactly right.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think it's a rule of physics, right? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, and so to some degree or another, you are going to see just a reflexive response. But by the same token, you also, it's not just that there is a reaction so much as it's the very concrete framing of a particular problem ends up in a reframing of other sort of non-related topics or corollary topics. I think, as a matter of fact, like the hot article this week, right, is about the diner goths, right?
Yeah.
Like the shrinking of American subculture, or the flattening of subculture to the degree that everybody is kind of part of one single subculture that gets embodied by diner goths in this New Atlantis article is, as many people have pointed out, like there have always been goths. Goths have always had only diners to go to. Like this is, the number of times I sat around in Denny's after a hardcore show in 1992 with what were, for all intents and purposes, goths. There were a lot of them, but it is interesting to think like, okay, the framing of pop culture through these kind of digital lenses is what allows us to see the diner goths for the first time, right? I'm so sorry, that was not really a response to your question, but it is a reaction to all of it.
Well, I guess with the because I've not dabbled in the through Love Island stuff. I mean, is there aspects of that that's like, well, AI, other than there's technology, right? But like, there's the genre, the tone, because of AI, it's more likely that this kind of thing comes out.
Well, I mean, it's a very interesting thing because like this is not the first time this trend has happened. At least not with Love Island. Something like this happened, I think, a year ago.
I just explained that. Diner goths have been around forever. Sorry, please
they've
continue.
been around forever. That's why there was a whole Gothic period of time. There was
the original goths. Actually, the Visigoths. What were the Visigoths? Where were the Visigoths dining? This is my question.
True. Blackwell, I have no idea.
That's my Roman Empire.
There was like a year ago, or maybe even longer, there was a whole series of like gay-ish, I'm assuming gay-ish creators, not that they were the first ones doing it, I'm sure there were other people doing it too, who were making these videos about like RuPaul's Drag Race, but with like AI generated cartoon characters from like Pixar movies, and just casting characters from the cartoon world to participate in like this RuPaul's Drag Race. And like it had a bit of a following in the Drag Race world, but it was ridiculous. And that didn't cross over because that's such a niche upon a niche. But this one is actually crossing over. And like, I think it wouldn't have happened, it's very funny if we sort of like look at this echo of like, AI and fruit have always sort of had a weird relationship. Like, I'm sure it goes back further, but like last summer there was the like fruit. There we go. That's the origin. But like that actually, like, it's not far off because like there was the whole like fruit cutting videos from last summer where it was like these sort of like they cut into it. And it's like glass fruit and all these things that sort of represent whatever, the impossible as represented through fruit. And now like cut to now, like these sort of videos at the beginning of the month were sort of sexualized fruit, these fruit that are having extramarital affairs and who are like having extreme sort of like body issues or representing sort of like, stereotypes and foibles in the dating world through just fruit being fruit. And now the fruit has been sort of cast into characters on TV show. And so like that, it seems like the people who somehow, and this has happened why I watch the Drag Race ones, is because it was like, I will watch any Drag Race thing you put in front of me. I won't give my full attention, but I'll watch it. And I know that there's a similar sort of like brain scratching thing that happens with like a Love Island. So it's just the same thing. It's like, oh, this is the same show. And like quite literally people are making comparisons between certain like animations and maybe subplots too. I don't know because I haven't watched Love Island. Of it sort of ripping off exactly a specific character and the fruit Love Island. So like it's not new or novel. Like it's just basically it's a copy machine with weird skins. So like I'm sure Love Island will reference this in the next season. However, like I don't think it's going to be a monetizable you know what I mean? Like I don't think the lesson it's a similar thing to really quick, it's a similar thing to like Heated Rivalry. Oh, the lesson here is let's make more hockey shows. That's not the lesson. Like it's not like that's not the message. That might be the medium. The message is like gay people really like seeing hot men make out. Wow. So like there's something being scratched. The lesson's not going to be learned. Like it's something that needs to be teased out more than that. That makes sense.
I was wondering, Kyle, and just as we come to a close in the conversation, Chris, I'd love you to feedback on this too. The extent to which the lessons will be taken from these renegade creations, the Fruit Love Island, whatever, and captured not by the people that they are ostensibly disrupting, or not captured at the expense of the people that they are disrupting, but in fact by the people they are disrupting. Right. And one of the stories around the whole AI drawdown in stock prices a couple of weeks ago was that subscription as a service companies, LinkedIn and ServiceNow and so on and so forth, are doomed because now the AI can do all of that stuff. But what that presumption ignores is that those companies can't just use their customer capture to hold on long enough to develop the thing themselves, right? So Fruit Love Island doesn't disrupt Love Island. It becomes co-opted into Love Island and becomes a part of Love Island's IP.
Absolutely.
Seems like the much more
they will be dropping an app in like the next year where you can make your own Love Island with your friends. Like, yeah, why not? Like
not
that
with my
would
friends.
be not with your friends.
No
I don't know about my friends, maybe, but like that's like, but that shit like that, like yeah, it's like it's do you want the free version or do you want to pay $5 a month so that you can hold on to the Love Island episode you made with all the friends that you're going on vacation with to watch?
Yeah, it's fascinating. I see both sides, right? I imagine with something like Love Island, where it's between seasons, like you could think, oh my God, there's a pipeline of content that we can feed people and, remind them of the main event, but then there's the risk of dilution, right? As, okay, well, you're just giving people not something that's not quite the real thing, and they feel satisfied or maybe even disillusioned with it. I mean, it could go both ways, and the licensing piece could go, like, you could be very, very protective, think, no, we're not going to allow any reproductions of it, or try to use it in some other context. I mean, I don't know exactly what it would look like. I'm thinking more broadly than Love Island here, but to get that entry level for new audiences, I don't think anyone really has the answer yet. But to your point, yeah, is it the case that through Love Island, these becomes where the lessons have learned, where we all have to sit and observe and think, okay, this is now the precedent. It's just not something you can visualize in advance, or unfortunately for my part, do much my research in advance to figure out. It's just analyzing the blast radius of these pop culture events.
Totally.
That's funny. It's Love Island. It's always Love Island somewhere.
That's what they say.
All right.
Famously.
Well, famous last words. So we have, speaking of which, we have come to the close of Hip Replacement episode 50. We've been here with Chris Beer from GWI. And Chris, where can the people find you or find your work or engage with everything that you're working on?
Yeah, so the kind of stuff I've quoted today, I mean, probably best place to go is socials, where we're usually at gwy.com. That's spelled GWI.DOTCOM. And then I have a sideline in my own data visualizations that I put on Instagram at Chris Beerish. And I'm developing a Substack, which is more anecdote than data at the moment, chrisbeerish.substack.com. And I sometimes
beer like the drink for those listening.
Beer like the drink, yeah. And I sometimes pop up on Reddit under my pseudonym as well. So you may see me there as well. Who knows?
Amazing.
Awesome. Well, Chris, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks very much for joining us for this 50th episode of Hip Replacement. Kyle will be back next week with another episode. And I've really enjoyed my golden podcast, guys. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Pleasure to be here.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you to Chris Beard once again. And Kyle, I will see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.